All right, I think we're ready to go. Hello, everyone. Meteorologist Charles Rupp here with an update on Hurricane Dorian as it churns out in the Atlantic. Here's the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center. You see it on the right side of your screen. There it is right there, the 2 o'clock advisory. It is now a major hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale, although the winds only increased by about 5 miles an hour to get to that threshold. Now, maximum sustained winds are 115 miles per hour as it moves off towards the northwest at 10. Pressure now at 970. So the pressure, the central barometric pressure, continues to drop as we go through the afternoon hours. Hurricane Recon is still out there investigating this. We'll continue to get more data from them in the near term. So we'll put this into motion. Here's what we're expecting over the next couple days as we get into, say, the Sunday time frame period. We'll bring this closer to the Bahamas and northern Bahamas. There are hurricane watches in effect for some of these islands out here. That means conditions are possible for hurricane conditions in about 48 hours. That's the definition of a watch. Also, we'll continue to see this move off towards more of the east over time. And as you notice, right around day 3, that cone starts to widen, and now the cone of uncertainty rather starts to move towards South Florida. This is around Monday morning. They're thinking max sustained winds could be as high as 140 miles an hour, making this a strong Category 4 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale. Beyond that, though, beyond 4 to 5 days, things are still up in the air right now. It could move a little farther towards the south. That ridge could be stronger and then push it off farther north and west, or this ridge could be a little bit weaker and push this thing a little bit more, turn it a bit sooner, either along the Florida coastline or a little bit inland from there, or maybe even to stay a little bit offshore. Those are the scenarios that are in play. I'll talk more about what some of the ensemble members are doing, what some of the operational guidance is doing. But first, let's go right into the storm. This is where it is right now relative to everything. You could see here, if I could pull up my tools, you can see Tallahassee right over here. That is the wrong one. You can see Tallahassee right over here. There's Tampa. There's Miami. There's the Space Coast right there. And there is Dorian churning out in the Atlantic. Let's get a little closer look at this storm. Again, a Cat 3 hurricane. It's let me turn off tropical track here so you can get a better sense of the eye. And that was developing this morning. Probably about an hour after I got into work, I started noticing the thunderstorm complex developing around the center, and it looked like it was starting to cave in the center. I'm like, okay, looks like we got an eye going here. And sure enough, that escalated quickly as we got through the morning hours. Now, this storm is looking very impressive. Let's look a little closer, too, on the visible satellite imagery. A bit more resolution, a bit more, you can see more detail with it, too. And you can definitely tell there's an eye to it. And looking a little bit closer on some of the satellite imagery, you can see this thunderstorm complex is starting to blow up near the southern side of it. So this is a sign that it's still strengthening. It's not stopping. Conditions are continue to improve for further development, sustainability at least, as this moves off towards the northwest and then westward. Now, the forward movement has slowed down a little bit. It was about like 13 miles an hour or so earlier in the morning, then slowed down to 10. It was at this advisory. That's still the case as we get into the afternoon time frame. Again, hurricane hunters rather, are still out flying around this thing. I'll try to make sense of all this. There's a lot of data. This flight's been out there for hours. I actually, looking at it now, it looks like they may be flying back. There's a plane there. It's going off towards the west, so they may be done for the day. Of course, there'll be other flights going in and out throughout this whole event until it makes landfall. The last fix, if I can see it here, it's really all jumbled and mess, but based on the hurricane statement, the advisory from 2 o'clock, we're still looking at pressure at 970 millibars. So from earlier this morning, at 7:30 in the morning, it was 975. They had some at 974. It's still looking pretty impressive in terms of intensification so far. Now, I want to show this to you guys. I'm doing something a little bit different here on the graphics computer here. What you see in the red is the American GFS model. What you see in the blue is the European model. These are operational runs. These are on ensembles. Just the one operational run. And there's a difference. I mean, it looked like earlier in the morning, you know, the GFS and the Euro were onto something. They weren't too far off on location. Now that looks a little bit different. We could see here it's thinking more of a northern landfall with the GFS, while southern landfall over towards South Florida, south of Fort Pierce, likely around the West Palm area. That's one scenario. The other scenario has us going a little bit farther north with the GFS. I'll speed it up a little bit here. Pretty much over the Space Coast by the time we get to Tuesday afternoon. So backtracking a little bit, based on guidance runs here, landfall would be sometime, let's just say Monday night to Tuesday morning. That will be the general time frame based on it. And they kind of show you these the wind lines you see here, the stream lines. I had that clocked at 40 miles per hour or greater. So you're seeing, based on the model run, the winds at 40 miles per hour or higher. So notice that the tropical storm force winds are mostly on the right-hand side of it, not so much inland, at least at this time. So let's move it forward a little bit. Let's go to about, Wednesday morning, right around noontime. This is the model projection. Now you're starting to lose some of that threshold I set, the 40 miles an hour or greater. Notice we're not seeing the winds in this scenario impacting our neck of the woods. But say if you're in Jacksonville, Daytona, yeah, there you have a chance for seeing those winds, tropical storm force at least, especially along the coastline. And this takes off towards the north over time as we get to Thursday. Again, these are two scenarios. This is subject to change over the next few days, especially with this this room for error. And I think the next graphic I'll show will kind of illustrate that pretty well. This is the GFS ensemble members. And so what an ensemble member does is it takes the initial, it does one run, and it takes the initial conditions and it tweaks it just a little bit. Maybe a stronger ridge, maybe a different water temperature, maybe certain other variables in play. Tweaks the conditions, runs that model. Tweaks another set of conditions, runs that model again. It doesn't repeats. Some models, it's maybe 20, 30 members to it. So it gives you a lot of scenarios for what could happen with this. So let's move forward, shall we? And it looks like it's initializing okay. Some of the lines start farther north of it, but we'll go from there. So this is what the ensemble members look like Saturday as we get into around, say, 9:30 Saturday night, getting close to the northern Bahamas there. And then we start getting into, say, Sunday at around 2 o'clock or so. Some are slower, some are faster, but needless to say, approaching south to central Florida here. And then let's move forward into, say, Sunday night, early Monday morning. So at that case, Sunday night to Monday morning, you'll see the center of circulation. Remember, these lines show the center of circulation. It doesn't show wind at all. It just shows you where the center is. And that's your scenario right there, list of scenarios, rather. And then we get to Monday. Now, this is, I think these are the newer runs, the GEFS. And they start to curve back off towards the north. That is not a nice scenario for us if those were to come to play. So that's something we have to keep an eye for. This is why the Hurricane Center has that cone so wide, because it could go more west, come back into the Gulf, or it could stay out more east and stay out in the Atlantic, or stay a little bit just offshore of Florida's east coast, or even the Georgia east coast. So I think these are the newest ensemble runs, if I'm not mistaken. So that's something we have to watch for over the next few days. This is why we in the weather department are not really saying yet with certainty X location is going to see this, Y location is going to see that. It's just too far in advance, and you see the spread here with this run of ensemble members. I think these run about every 6 hours or so, so we'll have to keep checking back over time to see if we want to see consistency with location, we want to see consistency with timing, and preferably strength too, to get a better idea, okay, this is where they have a bit more comfortable confidence to say this is a scenario we can see and therefore prepare for it. So let's go with probability. This is from the Hurricane Center. This is a probability of tropical storm force winds, let's say through Wednesday around 2 o'clock. And I would say with pretty good confidence that places from about Melbourne, Titusville southward to near Miami, there's about 90+% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds. For our neck of the woods, though, Tallahassee running around 30% odds of seeing tropical storm force winds. The farther south and east you go, those odds will increase. So there's something to watch over the next few days. Hurricane force winds, not as confident as of now, at least. As you see here on the screen, there's a higher confidence, 50% or greater, for seeing hurricane force winds through Wednesday afternoon. That's pointing towards, looks like West Palm Beach area, Delray, etc. And as you go farther north and west, those odds will drop. So I believe at Tallahassee, it looks like about 0 to 10% chance at this time for seeing hurricane force winds. Again, the farther south and east you go, the higher the odds will be. So there's a lot of uncertainty still in this forecast, but there's one thing, especially if the storm moves a little bit farther inland, it could be a rainmaker. And especially if it slows down, that is going to be a massive undertaking. Here's the GFS ensemble average. Again, I showed you the ensemble means for the track. Here's the ensemble average. You average them all up, and this is the rainfall potential. You could see 5 to 8 inches, maybe 8 inches in Vero Beach. Depending on the track, maybe a little bit less for Miami. But along the coastline, it looks like it has some of the greater odds for seeing the highest rainfall totals between now and next Friday. This is a 7-day outlook here. So Tallahassee, maybe a couple inches of rain. Again, it all depends on where the actual track goes. So there's a lot of variables at stake here. So we're pretty confident it's going to make more of that from the northwest to a western track. And we're confident of this. But beyond that, especially when you see this cone widen out, it's fair game. We could see this thing could go a little farther south towards Miami. It could go more towards the center of the state. It could go more to the east or offshore. So this is something we need to continue to watch over the next few days. Those in the Panhandle, especially towards the peninsula, the peninsula towards the east coast. Peninsula, need to keep an eye on this in the near term. The Panhandle, just keep watching it over the next few days. As time goes on, we'll know more. Make sure your hurricane kits are well stocked. It's a good idea to make sure you have everything in hand just in case something were to transpire. So that's what we have right now. The next full advisory will be out at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Chief Meteorologist Mike McCall will be here. Our newscast starts at 4 o'clock, so we'll have more details from him on there. We'll also keep updating the app. Be sure to download WCTV Pinpoint Weather app, too. I'll throw this out there as well. Of course, we have our forecasts on there, but also there's a tracking map from the storm in the official Hurricane Center forecast. If you go to the map, click on the map icon, you'll see that on there. So if you haven't downloaded it, be sure to get that. Also, you get notifications, location-based notifications that are watches or warnings issued, whether it be hurricane advisories or tornado advisories or severe weather advisories, whatever they may be. For this event or weather event down the road, you have access to that on our WCTV Pinpoint Weather app. Also, we'll be keeping an eye on it again. 4 o'clock newscast, 5 o'clock next advisory comes in. Chief Meteorologist Mike McCall will be here to give you details on that. We'll be able to pipe that on Facebook as well a little bit later on this evening. So keep checking back with us online and on air for the latest details on Hurricane Dorian. This is meteorologist Charles Roop signing off for now.